Hidden within the annals of ancient writings lies a trove of stories shrouded in mystery, texts that whisper across the centuries, bearing the weight of wisdom and wonder. Among these revered works is the enigmatic Book of Daniel, a cornerstone of sacred literature. Yet, nestled within its folds is a lesser-known and often overlooked treasure: the additions to Daniel. What truths or secrets have been obscured by the passage of time? What layers of intrigue surround the enigmatic tale of Bel and the Dragon? Step into the shadows of history with us as we delve into the additions to the Book of Daniel, a journey to uncover mysteries hidden for millennia. In the third year of King Jehoiakim's rule over Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, the powerful king of Babylon, marched into Jerusalem and seized control of the city. The sacred treasures from the temple were plundered and carried off to Babylon, along with King Jehoiakim himself. It's said that God permitted this to happen, allowing Babylon to dominate Judah. Once back in Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar commanded his chief official, Ashpenaz, to select young captives from Jerusalem's nobility, youths with no physical flaws, sharp intellects, and the wisdom to be molded into servants for the royal court. Among those chosen were 4 remarkable young men: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. These young men were enrolled in an intense 3-year program where they learned Babylonian language, literature, and customs. Their education was lavishly supported. Nebuchadnezzar himself ordered that they be fed the finest food and wine from his table to ensure they were strong and healthy. Yet, Daniel resolved not to defile himself by indulging in the rich royal diet, which went against his beliefs. With humility and tact, he approached the palace steward, asking permission to eat simpler fare. Daniel's integrity had already won him favor with the steward, but even so, the official hesitated, worried that the king would punish him if Daniel and his friends appeared less robust than their peers. Daniel proposed a solution. For 10 days, he and his friends would eat only vegetables and drink water. At the end of the trial, their health would be compared to that of the others. Reluctantly, the steward agreed. For 10 days, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah stayed true to their simple diet. When the steward examined them afterward, he was astonished. They looked healthier and more vibrant than the others who had feasted on the king's luxuries. Their steady diet of vegetables and water was allowed to continue, and they thrived. God blessed these 4 young men with extraordinary abilities. Their knowledge, wisdom, and understanding surpassed all expectations. Daniel, in particular, was given the rare gift of interpreting dreams and visions, setting him apart even further. When the 3 years of training ended, the youths were brought before King Nebuchadnezzar. The king himself tested them, engaging them in discussions and challenging their intellect. None of the other trainees could compare to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The king found their wisdom and insight so profound that they outshone even his most experienced magicians and sorcerers. From that day, these young men stood in high regard in the Babylonian court, their brilliance unmatched. Daniel, especially, continued to serve faithfully, his wisdom enduring through the reigns of many kings, even into the time of King Cyrus. In the 2nd year of his reign, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream so disturbing it shook him to his core. He couldn't sleep, couldn't think, and couldn't let it go. Desperate for answers, he summoned his advisors, magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and Chaldeans, and demanded they interpret the dream. But he didn't stop there. He insisted they first tell him what he had dreamt, not just its meaning. The room fell silent. The advisors were stunned. "Tell us the dream, and we'll interpret it," they begged. But Nebuchadnezzar wasn't having it. He accused them of stalling, even scheming, and doubled down. If they couldn't tell him the dream and its meaning, they would be executed. On the other hand, if they succeeded, they'd be richly rewarded and showered with honor. The Chaldeans tried again, pleading with the king. "No king has ever asked this of anyone," they said. "Only the gods could reveal such a thing, and they don't live among us mortals." Their words only made the king angrier. Feeling betrayed by their failure, he ordered the execution of all the wise men in Babylon, a sentence that included Daniel and his friends. When Daniel heard about the king's decree, he didn't panic. Instead, he approached Arioch, the captain of the guard, with a calm but urgent question. "Why is the king's command so harsh?" Arioch explained what had happened, and Daniel asked to speak to the king. Once before Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel requested more time, promising he would uncover the mystery. Returning home, Daniel shared the gravity of the situation with his companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and urged them to pray. Together, they cried out to God, asking for mercy and wisdom to reveal the dream. That night, Daniel received a vision, and the mystery was made clear. When he woke, Daniel's heart overflowed with gratitude. He praised God, declaring, "You are the one who changes times and seasons, who raises up kings and brings them down. You reveal the hidden things, and wisdom belongs to you." With confidence, Daniel approached Arioch, saying, "Take me to the king. I know the dream and its meaning." Before Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel humbly admitted, "No wise man, magician, or sorcerer could ever do what you've asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has shown you what's to come." Daniel began to recount the dream. "You saw a massive statue, brilliant and terrifying. Its head was made of gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet a mix of iron and clay. Then a stone cut without human hands struck the statue's feet, shattering them. The entire statue crumbled to dust, blown away by the wind, leaving no trace. But the stone grew into a mountain, filling the whole earth." As Nebuchadnezzar listened, Daniel explained the meaning. "You, O king, are the head of gold, a mighty and glorious kingdom. After you, other kingdoms will rise, each inferior to the last. The silver represents the next, the bronze another, and the iron a kingdom of unmatched strength. But the feet, mixed with iron and clay, show a kingdom that will be divided, partly strong, partly weak. Its people will be fragmented, unable to fully unite, like iron and clay that can't mix. But here's the most important part. During the reign of those kings, the God of heaven will establish a kingdom that will never fall. It will crush all others and stand forever. The stone in your dream represents this divine kingdom, created by God, not by human hands. It will fill the earth, unshakable and eternal." Nebuchadnezzar was stunned. He fell to the ground in awe of Daniel and his God. "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings," he declared. "He has revealed to you what no one else could." Grateful and impressed, the king showered Daniel with rewards. He appointed him as governor over Babylon and chief of all the wise men in the kingdom. At Daniel's request, his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were also given important positions, while Daniel remained in the royal court, trusted and favored by the king. The prayer of the courageous trio in the fire. 3 young men stood in the heart of a blazing furnace, surrounded by flames meant to destroy them. Yet, they weren't afraid. Instead, they lifted their voices in prayer and praise, declaring their trust in God. As the fire roared, Azariah spoke with conviction, his words echoing against the walls of the furnace. "Blessed are you, Lord, the God of our ancestors," he prayed. "Your name is glorious forever. Everything you do is just, every decision you make is right, and your judgments are true." Azariah didn't shy away from acknowledging the mistakes of his people. He confessed how they had strayed, disobeying God's commands and breaking the covenant. Their suffering, he said, was a consequence of those choices. Yet, even as he admitted their failures, his voice was steady with hope. "Do not turn away from us, Lord," he pleaded. "Remember your promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, how you swore to make their descendants as countless as the stars and as abundant as the sand by the sea. Even though we've fallen short, we ask for your mercy. Don't leave us to be forgotten." Though they had no temple or sacrifices to offer, Azariah and his companions knew that what mattered most was the sincerity of their hearts. "We come before you with humble spirits and genuine faith," he said. "We have no rams or bulls to give, but we offer our devotion. Let it be pleasing to you, Lord." As they prayed, the furnace burned hotter than ever, so fierce that even the guards outside were consumed by its flames. But inside, something extraordinary happened. The angel of the Lord appeared with them, surrounding the young men with peace. The fire couldn't touch them. The heat vanished, replaced by a cool, gentle breeze. Together, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael began to sing, "Blessed are you, Lord, God of our ancestors. Your name is holy, and your glory fills the heavens. You sit above all, enthroned on the cherubim, and your greatness lasts forever. All creation belongs to you, and everything sings of your praise." Their song became a call to all of creation. "Let the sun, the moon, and the stars praise the Lord. Let the winds and rain, the fire and frost, the mountains and rivers, and everything that lives on earth bless his name. Even the smallest creature gives him glory. Let Israel and all who serve the Lord join in thanksgiving, lifting their voices to honor him. His mercy lasts forever." They rejoiced in their deliverance. "Give thanks to the Lord, for he has saved us from death. Let Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael sing of his kindness, for he has rescued us from the flames. Let everyone who trusts in him give thanks, for his mercy never ends." The flames that were meant to destroy them became a stage for their faith. God had turned their trial into a moment of triumph, showing his power to protect and his mercy to save. As their praises rang out, the fiery furnace became a sanctuary of hope and a testimony to the enduring greatness of God. The wicked plot against Susanna. In the bustling city of Babylon, Joachim was a man of influence and wealth, known for his generosity and wisdom. His home was a gathering place for the Jewish community, partly because of the serene, sprawling garden that surrounded it. His wife, Susanna, was the jewel of his household, a woman of striking beauty and unwavering faith, raised in righteousness by parents who had instilled in her the teachings of God's law. That same year, 2 elders were appointed as judges. Though their titles commanded respect, their hearts were corrupt. They used their position as a shield for their dark desires, preying on the vulnerable under the guise of authority. These men frequented Joachim's house, ostensibly to fulfill their duties, but their true reason was far more sinister. Both had become infatuated with Susanna. Day by day, the elders let their desire for Susanna consume them. They watched her whenever she walked through the garden, hiding their longing behind veils of politeness. At first, they kept their thoughts to themselves, but their obsession grew too strong to bear in silence. One afternoon, they crossed paths in the garden, their shared fixation finally spoken aloud. "I can't stop thinking about her," one admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. The other, emboldened by the confession, nodded in agreement. From that moment, they conspired together, scheming to trap Susanna in her own sanctuary. One hot afternoon, Susanna decided to bathe in the privacy of the garden. She asked her 2 maids to bring her oil and washing supplies and to close the garden doors, ensuring no one could enter. The maids obeyed and left, their footsteps fading as they exited through a side door. The elders, who had been hiding among the trees, seized their chance. They emerged, their faces twisted with lust and menace. "The garden doors are closed, Susanna," one said, his voice low and menacing. "No one can see us, and we desire you. If you refuse, we'll claim we saw you here with a young lover. Everyone will believe us, and you'll be ruined." Susanna froze, her mind racing as she weighed the impossible choices before her. To yield would mean betraying her faith and her God. To refuse would risk her life and her honor. Her voice shook as she finally replied, "I will not sin against the Lord, even if it costs me everything." One of the elders ran to the garden door and flung it open, creating a scene to make their lies seem plausible. Hearing the commotion, Joachim's servants rushed in, alarmed by Susanna's cries. The elders wasted no time spinning their story. "We caught her in the act," they shouted, pointing at Susanna with accusing fingers. "She was here with a young man who fled when we approached." The servants looked at Susanna in disbelief. How could such a virtuous woman be guilty of such a thing? But the elders' words carried weight, and suspicion began to spread. The next day, the community gathered to hear the charges. Joachim stood at the center of the crowd, his face marked with confusion and pain, as the elders demanded that Susanna be brought forward. Her family accompanied her, parents, children, and relatives, all shocked and dismayed by the accusation. Susanna stood quietly, her head held high despite the storm of whispers and judgment around her. Susanna stood in the midst of the assembly, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. Her modesty and grace, once celebrated, now seemed to make her a target. The crowd watched as the 2 elders, cloaked in false piety, stepped forward to accuse her. "Uncover her face," they demanded. The assembly complied, revealing her tear-streaked expression. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd, and many wept at the sight of her distress. The elders began their tale, carefully crafted to frame her. "While walking in Joachim's garden, we saw her meeting with a young man. They were embracing, but when we confronted them, the man fled. She is guilty of betrayal and dishonor." Susanna, her voice trembling but firm, refused to yield to their lies. "I have done no such thing," she said, her eyes meeting the crowd's. But their words carried weight, and doubt crept into the assembly. With no evidence but the testimony of these 2 judges, the crowd condemned Susanna to death. As the verdict fell, Susanna lifted her face to the heavens. "O eternal God," she prayed, her voice breaking with anguish, "you know everything. You see their wickedness and their lies. Do not let me die for a crime I did not commit." Her words reached beyond the crowd, and the Lord heard her plea. Just as the sentence was about to be carried out, a young man stepped forward. "I will not allow this injustice," Daniel declared, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. The people turned to him, startled by his boldness. "Are you all so quick to condemn an innocent woman without a proper investigation?" he demanded. "Return to the place of judgment, and let this matter be re-examined. Justice cannot rest on lies." The assembly, moved by Daniel's courage and wisdom, agreed to his request. Back at the place of judgment, Daniel called for the two elders to be separated for questioning. To the first he asked, "If you truly saw Susanna with a man, tell me, under which tree did you see them together?" The elder answered confidently, "Under the mastic tree." Daniel fixed him with a piercing stare. "You have lied," he said, his voice steady. "The angel of God has received his command to cut you in two." He then turned to the second elder. "Now, you, under which tree did you witness this act?" The man hesitated, but then replied, "Under a large oak tree." Daniel's expression hardened. "You too have lied. The angel of God waits to strike you down for your deceit." The crowd erupted in outrage as the truth unraveled. The elders, once respected, were now exposed as liars and manipulators. Praise filled the air for the God who protects the innocent and sees all hidden things. Following the laws of Moses, the punishment the elders had planned for Susanna was turned back on them. Their lives ended that day, a grim reminder of the consequences of bearing false witness. As for Daniel, his wisdom and integrity became the talk of the city. People admired the young man who had dared to stand against injustice and who had revealed the truth with such clarity. From that day forward, Daniel's reputation as a man of God and a defender of the innocent only grew, a beacon of hope and righteousness in a world often clouded by corruption. Long ago, in the days when empires rose and fell and faith was tested by fire, Daniel took a stand that would echo through the ages. After the death of King Ahasuerus, Cyrus of Persia ascended the throne, inheriting the mighty kingdom of Babylon. Among his advisors, none was more esteemed than Daniel, a man of wisdom, integrity, and unwavering faith in the living God. At that time, the people of Babylon worshipped a grand idol called Bel. Bel was the centerpiece of their devotion, and its temple was filled daily with extravagant offerings: 12 measures of fine flour, 40 sheep, and 6 vessels of wine. Even King Cyrus, despite his wisdom, bowed before Bel, believing it to be a living god. But Daniel, true to his faith, refused to follow the crowd. When the king questioned Daniel about his defiance, Daniel spoke plainly, his voice steady with conviction. "Your Majesty, I cannot worship something crafted by human hands. I serve the living God, the creator of heaven and earth, who rules over all life." The king, intrigued but skeptical, challenged Daniel. "Do you mean to say Bel is not alive? Look at the offerings it receives daily. Surely only a living God could consume so much?" Daniel smiled, unfazed. "Do not be deceived by appearances, Your Majesty. Bel is nothing but clay and brass. It neither eats nor drinks. The offerings are consumed by men, not gods." Cyrus, frustrated by Daniel's words, summoned Bel's priests to defend the idol's honor. "Tell me," he demanded, "who consumes the food placed before Bel? If you cannot prove it is Bel, you will die. But if Bel truly eats the offerings, Daniel will pay for his blasphemy." The priests, confident in their scheme, assured the king of Bel's divinity. They proposed a test. The king would prepare a feast for Bel, seal the temple door with his royal signet, and return the next day to witness the offerings gone. Proof of Bel's power. The king agreed, as did Daniel, who had his own plan. As the priests departed, Daniel instructed the king to allow his servants to scatter ashes across the floor of the temple before sealing it. The king consented, and the task was completed before they both left, locking the door with the royal seal. That night, as the city slept, the priests crept into the temple through a secret passage beneath the altar. With their families in tow, they devoured the food and drank the wine, leaving the table empty for the king's inspection. At dawn, Cyrus and Daniel returned. The king examined the seals on the temple door and found them intact. Overjoyed, he opened the door and saw the table bare. "Behold the power of Bel," he exclaimed, ready to praise the idol. But Daniel stopped him. "Wait, your majesty. Before you enter, look closely at the floor." The king peered down and saw footprints, many footprints, imprinted in the ashes. There were traces of men, women, and children. His face darkened with realization. "What is this?" he thundered. The priests were summoned and confronted. Faced with the evidence, they confessed their deceit. Furious at their betrayal, the king ordered their execution and the destruction of their families. The secret passage was sealed, and the priests' treachery was laid bare for all to see. With the priests punished, Cyrus turned his attention to the idol itself. "Bel is yours to do with as you please," he told Daniel. Daniel wasted no time. He ordered the idol to be dismantled and its temple razed to the ground, ensuring that no trace of its falsehood would remain. In ancient Babylon, there was a fearsome dragon that the people revered as a deity. Towering and imposing, the creature appeared alive. It ate, drank, and inspired awe. The king, curious about Daniel's steadfast faith, challenged him, asking, "Surely you must believe in the divinity of this dragon?" But Daniel, unwavering in his belief in the living God, refused. "I do not worship idols or creatures, no matter how grand," he said calmly. "Let me prove to you that this dragon is no god at all." Intrigued by Daniel's confidence, the king allowed him to proceed. Daniel devised a clever plan. He combined pitch, fat, and hair into heavy lumps and fed them to the dragon. The concoction was deadly, and soon after consuming it, the dragon burst apart, destroyed from within. Daniel stood before the stunned crowd and declared, "This dragon is no god. The true God is the living creator of all things, the one who rules over heaven and earth." The people of Babylon, however, were not so easily swayed. Furious at the destruction of their idol and the challenge to their beliefs, they turned their anger toward the king. Whispers of rebellion spread through the city. The people accused the king of betraying their gods, having already witnessed the fall of the idol Bel, and now the destruction of their revered dragon. Owing to the mounting pressure, the king reluctantly handed Daniel over to the mob. Daniel was thrown into a den of ravenous lions, a pit designed for execution and despair. 7 lions prowled within, typically fed daily with carcasses and sheep to keep them satisfied. For 6 long days, Daniel remained in the den, but the lions, miraculously, did not harm him. Meanwhile, far away, the prophet Habakkuk was preparing food for workers in the fields when an angel of the Lord appeared. Grasping Habakkuk by the hair, the angel transported him to Babylon in an instant. Stunned, Habakkuk found himself before the lion's den, where he called out to Daniel. "Daniel, God has sent you this meal," he cried. Overwhelmed by the miraculous intervention, Daniel gave thanks. "You have not forgotten me, O Lord. You are faithful to those who love and seek you." He ate the meal and was strengthened, while the lions remained docile around him. The angel then returned Habakkuk to his fields as swiftly as he had come. On the 7th day, the king went to the den to mourn for Daniel, expecting to find only remains. To his shock, Daniel was alive, sitting unharmed among the lions. The king shouted in amazement, "Truly, Daniel's God is the living God. There is no one like him." Moved by the miracle, the king ordered Daniel to be lifted out of the den. As for those who had plotted against him, they were thrown into the pit in his place, and the lions devoured them instantly. The story of Daniel's encounter with the dragon and his deliverance from the lions highlights themes of faith, courage, and divine intervention. Daniel's unwavering trust in God not only exposed the futility of idol worship, but also revealed God's power to protect and vindicate his faithful servants. These tales, including those of Susanna, Bel, and the dragon, and Daniel in the lion's den, offer rich insights into God's justice and the triumph of truth over falsehood. They paint a vivid picture of how faith, even in the face of death, can lead to miraculous deliverance and a testament to God's greatness. What do you think of these accounts? Do they deepen your understanding of faith and God's power? Share your thoughts below.